Good afternoon, ladies. Spontaneous live broadcast for my podcast, Courage Dear Heart. I promised the ladies of my circle this morning in the group coaching call that I was going to speak to surrender and submission through the perspective of the feminine, because this theme came up in our group coaching call this morning, and yeah, I'm in the right place. Good. So I want to speak to this because it's been on the tip of my tongue. So, guys, my name is Charli Wall. For those of you that don't know me, I help women awaken to their true feminine nature and really teach them how to reroute into their desire, into their truth, undo years of conditioning and people pleasing, and create space in their system, in their psyche. So I'm just going to ground myself into this transmission, bring myself into my body. So I hope this video, this vlog, this podcast, this YouTube, wherever you are watching, listening, I hope this finds you very well. I normally do a question of the week on a Friday live in my free group, but I thought that this week I would speak to a theme that I've been seeing coming up in women. And that is that women are bored and they're restless and they're frustrated and they're filling their space with whatever they see to fill it with, whether that be thought or food or books or podcasts or certifications or courses or drama, like the very wide range of ways in which the feminine can fill herself up. And what many of you don't know is that one of your greatest powers as a woman is that you can command the energy in your field, and you have an ability to influence your field with your frequency, and you have an ability to master your field. And what do I mean by field? What do I mean when I say field? So you guys that listen to me are in my field. And what I mean by that within yourself is the energy that you are emanating from your being into the into the world, into the 3D matrix that we live in. This creation from within is what creates the field around you. So if you believe that you're not good enough, for example, or that you never get what you want, or that you don't deserve XYZ, or that all bad things happen to you, or whatever you have kind of under the surface, in the shadow, so to speak, that is literally what you emanate. That's that's the frequency that is projected into the field around you. So what I wanted to talk about today is submission and surrender. But before I really get into that, I want to just kind of highlight what I see happening is that many women I speak to, and a lot of those women are one-to-one clients, or they are, in my circle field, or they're in my group programs. They often feel like they are at a crossroads. So that might be at work, that might be in relationships, that might be within friendships, they might be at a crossroads with their own children. And what I'm hearing more and more is that women are really sick and tired of their own stuff. going over and over old wounding, going over and over all their trauma, doing all of the things, working really hard on themselves, and actually hitting just boredom. I definitely got to this place in my own self when I was doing the rounds of being counseled in my life, through the various stages of my life, with all of the many myriad of things that have happened to me in my life, going over and over stuff which just wasn't helping me. And I was bored. I didn't realize I was bored because I was covering up my boredom again with different coping strategies. But if you feel bored, do you feel bored? Do you feel bored of this stuff that's kind of circling around your psyche? And if so, how does this show up for you? How does this manifest for you in your life? Now, guys, I know this is a sort of spontaneous transmission, so if you are watching this later, please let me know by hashtagging replay. If you're listening on the podcast, obviously you won't be able to do that. But I'd love to hear from you if you are listening on the podcast. How does boredom show up for you? How does it manifest for you? And one of the ways that I help women transmute and transform these inner feelings is to help them truly understand the truth of their feminine nature, to access their high feminine. And we do this by tuning into your feminine signature, your unique frequency, your unique voice. What is being called to be birthed through you? What is moving through you? What is your inner voice whispering to you? Can you even hear her? How much do you listen to that? To mind, to the divine, to spirit, to your higher self, to the part of you that knows. And why is this important? This is important because the 3D matrix that we live in this world of form, will always try to bring you back to a single self, a separation from your higher self, your spirit self, the formless self. It will make you feel separate, and it will make you feel like things are supposed to be very hard work. That's the sort of paradigm that we live in. And it's really fascinating to see that all the women that I work with, all of them want things to be easier, want life to be easier, want to have more freedom, want to have more space and ease in their world, more money, better sex, better relationships, a more fulfilling job, or they have something that they are passionate about within a kind of artistry, creative form. But they don't quite have the courage to take the next step. And we're going to talk about that. So all the women that I speak to all want the same thing. And yet our self-development industry encourages women to work harder and be attached to the outcome, add more strategy, add more stuff, and essentially more things added on to you, pull you out of your feminine nature of being. So the change or the learning within you happens when you understand that you need to detach from all of that matter so that you can be the divine vessel that allows your art and your unique creative frequency signature to come through, to be birthed through you, which of course ripples out into your field and is in service to everybody. I was talking to a client last night, and my clients get access to my circle as part of their package. And she said to me, you know, it's quite incredible how you just answer these questions and you haven't prepared anything beforehand. And I said, it's because I deeply trust that what's meant to come through me will come through me. If I plan and prepare and make notes and scrabble about trying to get the right answer, trying to be perfect, I've tried that before and I just end up sounding like, energetically, it sounds a bit forced. So I learned a long time ago that I trust what's going to come through is going to come through, and the right person at the right time is meant to hear it. And I trust that for this too, deeply. But it's been a journey. And I'm going to go into some of the nuances of that, because there's been some thrashing about, or there used to be some thrashing about when before I really understood this very deeply. So what I hope will happen when I work with women is that you learn to detach from the 3D matrix conditioning. So the inner committee, the shitty committee, the little fucker, the shoulda, woulda, coulda, all the places that we go into what we think we should do, and trust your unique signature, your unique expression within your unique female body. And you will get results like joy and freedom and better relationships with friends and family members, because there would be no more matter, like form, filling up your space in your field. And space is something I always hear that people want. But space comes from not filling up the space, like not filling it up literally and metaphorically, becoming more and more open and trusting of what is meant for you, having faith in you and your dreams and your desires, and being vulnerable enough and open enough to trust that. And I see there's a sort of change happening in the field, in the sort of wider collective field. There is an awareness arising. Women are awakening. And you can sense as a woman, I think, that the hard work, in quotes, is just not working anymore. But you might feel restless, agitated, exhausted, and you are being called to be yourself. Not the same as anyone else, not the same as me, not the same as your friends, not the same as your parents, not the same as your mother, not the same as your father, but completely and utterly true for you. Because we all have a unique signature. You have a unique flavor of feminine, which no one else can ever copy, ever. And it doesn't matter to me whether you are a mother or a woman who has no children, or a menopausal woman, or a postmenopausal woman, or a prepubescent girl, a businesswoman, a wild woman. In order for you to do exactly what is for you, you have to learn to submit to your knowing. And your knowing is that which comes through you, and it's felt in your female system. There's a deeper place of knowing. But very often we don't trust that. We haven't been entrained to trust that. So we surrender to the familiar and the known. So I'll just expand a little bit more about the difference between submission and surrender. There is a felt sense between the two. So if you were to kind of have a feel about what surrender felt like, what would you say? Surrender is where I spent much of my life. It was like a trade-off. I didn't trust anybody else at all. Fiercely independent, and that was an armor. And the anxiety that manifested as anxiety, because I was creating with my system this illusion of control, which manifested as anxiety. So surrender to me was like, I need to control. I didn't know I was doing this. This was deeply unconscious. Surrender is, if I do this, then I get this. If I can control this, then I'm in control and I am safe. Surrender says, if I lay this down, I'll get this. So there's like almost like a trade-off, like an attachment to an outcome. So I'll often hear, like, I'm more in my feminine, but I haven't received money yet. Well, it's not a case of exchanging an attachment to an outcome. If you're open and submitted, you draw things to you. If you're surrendered, it's a bit, well, you're staying in that kind of control with your egoic preferences. And so this is a sort of sneaky little fucker, essentially. Because most of us wouldn't even know that we were trying to control the outcome. And the paradox of the feminine is that your swampy feminine, shadow feminine, whatever form you want to put around that, will to her last breath do everything in her power to preserve the very thing your high feminine is here to disrupt. So it may look like you're in submission, but the energy will always feel off, which is what and how I teach women to discern and to be honest with themselves about how they're still trying to control an outcome. So surrender has a feeling of control, and it's unconscious, this unconscious need for control, because she doesn't trust. But it's coming from an innocent need to feel safe, right? Everything's innocent, always. But we get stuck in ego, in control, in righteousness. So submission, on the other hand, is utter trust and faith in the command, the knowing. And you literally do not know what is going to happen. It is not a microscope on the attachment or the trade you are making. The microscope, if I do this and I get this and I want this within this time frame, the microscope is the surrender. Submission is from a different place altogether. And this is where I am going, and this is where I have been going, and this is where my clients are going. And to understand these differences is crucial to you being the master of your field, feminine mastery. The mastery piece is the not knowing, as uncomfortable as that is. Surrendering and trying to control just keeps you righteous, egoic, insecure, and impenetrable. And submission can feel quite scary, trusting yourself, and not anyone or anything outside of you. Submitting to your own knowing. which, of course, takes you into the unknown. So your feminine inner wisdom speaks to you through your mind like a quiet little whisper. It can speak to you through your body. It can whisper through your dreams. And women hear this, but they just pretend they don't, because that would require trust and emptiness and stillness. And emptiness is what's scary to us. So we fill up. We fill up on information, on drink, on food, on more qualifications, on scrolling, or other people's wisdom, which is kind of the same thing, podcasts, books, scrolling. We get dopamine from that, so we fill up on dopamine. And then we get overwhelmed and frustrated and bored and irritated with ourselves. But we might project that out into our field, onto other people. So we must remember that discomfort is normal when we are changing. But the trick is to allow that discomfort to take you into the tension of the unknown. And there's a difference between tension in submission, tension in the unknown, and tension and constriction and frustration and annoyance. There's a big difference. And mostly what we do is we collapse. We might go towards the tension, like let me go to my edge, let me kind of teeter on the edge of this, knowing, oh no, I can't, and I collapse back into the familiar. But being in the tension, which is different to constriction, it might feel uncomfortable, but it's going to take you towards what you actually know you want to be doing without attachment to an outcome. And when we collapse, often we avoid doing the thing that we really know we need to do. And that's very hard. It's very hard if you've been trying to keep yourself safe and there's so much matter in your field. And that will be different for all of you. But there's no healing without inflammation. So if you cut yourself, you have a wound, the healing process includes inflammation, which is not altogether a pleasant feeling, of course, but healing just means to make whole. So making whole, like you're already whole, you just don't know it. So without this trust, without this submission, without this self-belief, we avoid doing what we know we need to be doing. The avoidance of your truth. And the avoidance of your truth is the crux of your change, is where your power lies, in that place of stillness, in the unknown, in the void. You are not going to be able to see what's coming next. And this is where women thrash about. You're not going to know all the steps. And are you going to be okay with that? And if not, would you like to know how you are? This is the mastery that women are avoiding. Trusting themselves, knowing themselves, not filling the void in whatever way that looks like for you. You know, I first started this, I mean, I was an addictions counselor many, many, many years ago. And then I worked in fitness. So I worked with food and nutrition and exercise. And then when I first started this business, I would work specifically on like food addiction, alcohol addiction, because of my years of speciality in the field of addictions or habits. I called it habits. I have a brilliant program called she finds freedom, which is all about habits, right? But what I now understand through my learning over the later years is that that is how women have filled up their space. So it's the energy is where their power is. They just don't know that. They don't trust that. They haven't been entrained to trust that. So they turn it inwards on themselves. I've got a food problem. I've got an alcohol problem. I've got a sex problem. I've got a scrolling problem. I've got a shopping problem. I've got a debt problem. It's all the same energy being used against ourselves, because in the space, in the void, is where your power is. So can you give up your need to control? If you want the next level of your growth, you're going to have to submit to what is wanting to be birthed through you. And your surrendering will not make it happen. And boy, do I know this so well. So how do you know this is you? How do you know this is even for you, even this group, this podcast, me? How do you know that you're beginning to awaken your feminine? You might be bored. You might be frustrated. You might be irritated. You might just be feeling a sort of general lethargy. But boredom is a big one. You might have a deep, deep knowing that there's got to be an easier way to deepen into your femininity, into your womanhood. You might be the woman who's doing more courses, more business programs, more certifications, more housework, eating more food, drinking more alcohol, reading more books. Not realizing that your energy within yourself, all of the know that you are carrying in your body, translates through the law of correspondence to all of this know in your field. And another certification, another course, another book is not going to fix this. It's not going to fix the know within that translates to the know on the outside. All that filling, all of that adding, all of that thinking that you already know does not make room for what the universe wants you to do in service, in higher service to the wider field, your wider field, to humanity. Your submission, your obedience to your inner higher self, your high feminine, is a measurement of your devotion to yourself. If there is no emptying, there will be no widening, and you will only end up holding more and more and more and more stuff until you feel utterly exhausted, not listening to your no, thinking that you are submitting, but you are actually surrendering. There is an energetic dysfunction that I see over and over again, which is why I wanted to speak to this on this kind of wider platform. And this may not be for you. You may not be ready to hear this yet, and that's okay. But to learn to go from that deep attachment to an outcome, if I do this, I get this. To learn to go from that deep attachment to an outcome to this opened up field and allowing in the things that you say you want. More flow, more freedom, more space, more ease, more money. more faith in self. Because we innocently push away life's provision, not trusting life itself, and desperately trying to control the outcome, or pushing away that higher iteration of your own unique art, creativity, artistry, signature that I know you crave. And that is clawing to get out of your body, but it can't get out because it's so full up. There's so much matter in your field, so much distrust, so much control, or the illusion of control. And there's closure in that. And I know that you're bored with this. I know that I was bored with this. I just didn't know how to find my way out. And I was so lucky to have such an amazing coach who helped me understand this. So the feminine in truth loves new and fresh and the unimaginable, because that is what turns her on, because she is blindfolded. She has no sight. She doesn't need to know. There's no attachment to an outcome. But if that's not happening in your field and there's no turn on in your own field, then there's no life force. There's no joy. Because there's boredom and there's attachment and there's fear and there's control and there's habits and addictions. And as a result, there'll be no magnetism to bring those things to you. And so what actually happens is that your frequency, your feminine frequency, your unique siren will be emanating out there and bringing in all of the things that you really don't want, but that your ego and unconscious are sort of controlling to keep you in the known. So you may feel low and you may feel disappointed, but you will know deep in your bones that this is just not right. As Clarissa Pinkola Estes says, what do you know deep in your ovaries to be true? So this work, it kind of opens up the possibility of you having a different experience of life, to be that conduit for your art to come through. And it doesn't have to be in the form of actual paintings. I create my art in this form. So it can take any form. And that is in higher service to the world. It changes the way you vibrate. It changes your frequency. It changes you on a cellular level. It changes what you emanate. And you get to connect to and live from your higher feminine, your higher self, your truth, your brilliance, your genius. And this is how women really, truly want to feel. And the work, if you do it, and this even might be triggering your ego. It will, when you do this work, it will trigger that. It will trigger your ego. It will trigger your avoidance. When we do this work, our ego is on the chopping block. And women thrash about and squirm and like, ah. And sometimes the women who work with me get annoyed with me, and sometimes they retreat back into the safe, known place of their familiarity. And sometimes she does stop the process. And sometimes she creeps back to me because she hasn't actually got what she wanted. And then she's ready. And those moments are wonderful. And the women that say yes to the work that we do, they might thrash. And those that stay get amazing results. Have freedom, have grace. Okay. The ego and the avoidance are tricky and sneaky little fuckers because they bring you right back into control and attachment, and it will make you feel righteous, but it will throw you right back into the avoidance. So this is what happens. when you go through this process of trying to understand this and making the changes necessary, your ego will be on the chopping board. And this can be really challenging for us because the ego is sneaky. Carl Jung, who is, you've probably heard of Carl Jung, a psychoanalyst who worked and carried on Freud's work. And he's done a lot of work around feminine and masculine. And he said the feminine psyche is founded on eros. And the instincts of eros are opposed by the forces of ego. They don't exist in the same field. The avoidance and ego are about the same idea. It's near on impossible to have avoidance and eros at the same time. Avoidance and love for yourself. You can't be in avoidance and bring in your calling, your truth, the way that you desire. So part of the work that I do is to transmute the ego into love, into eros, into your life force that lights you up within your body. And that gets reflected on the outside, but not so as you can be perfect, not so as you can be loved, not so as there's a trade-off, but because you have a calling or something that you want to do, that you want to create. And that's important. It's important. And you are bringing it through. It's coming through you. My little dog is not being very avoidant at the moment. All of the conditions and the control must be dissolved and resolved, which can feel like a death blow, Thanatos, to the feminine because of all of her preferences. And she likes things just so. And she has an attachment to how things are and how things should be. But there's no inner submission or trust or faith in yourself in those places. And, you know, I'll hear people say, well, after this, I'll do it. After this, I'll do it. After this, I'll do it. And that was me. Oh, my God, that was me for years. Not after this, now. It's time now for you. It's your time. And whenever you're ready, you can come to me. You can come into my circle, which is where I can get my metaphorical hands on you. It's the cheapest way to get sort of nearer me into my field, where we have group coaching calls. And I can really help you understand the inner resistance. Because when you find that place in you, this is where you will deeply understand your high feminine, your yogi inner power. I don't even like the word power, but it's like magic. Because when you go towards that tension, of course, no one wants to feel like the good tension, the eustress, not distress, eustress. When we're there, it creates a vacuum, which is the black hole of the feminine into which all things are drawn. And that is the power that you have to create what you want, what you say you want. And you can feel the difference in your body between that truth and what you may be currently experiencing. So, you know, I really want to help women understand this and try and teach them differently. in their body, how energy works. So you get a felt sense of this. This is the work that I do with my one-to-one clients. This is what I will be talking about on my retreats, the retreat coming up in Spain in June, the rewilding retreat. And I've got a new one coming up in Crete in September, which will be launched very soon. I'm going to be teaching women to understand this energetic piece, how it works, how you can become the void and you can become the portal which draws things to you, the very things that you say you want, without all of the old stories and the beliefs and the narratives and the predictions and the preferences and the control and the insecurity and the sadness and the aloneness. Because you have so much more about you, and it starts within you. So I hope that makes sense. If you are interested, ladies, in my circle, it's a beautiful community of women. Very supportive, a very chatty WhatsApp group. And I love it very much. I love it when women come together, even if we're online. But I'd love it even more when we're in person. And I've got a retreat in Spain in June. Rewilding retreat. Getting into nature. Getting into the dirt. And then I've got another retreat coming up in September in Crete, which is going to be slightly different. So look out for details of that. I'll be sending out my newsletter, hopefully with this transmission as a public transmission with all the various links. But if you have any questions at all about this, just send me a message or write it under the comments or let me know you've listened or let me know what you've heard. Because I'm deeply passionate about doing this work and sharing this work and helping women wake up to what's true for them and seeing what unfolds, because it's incredible to see. Okay, take care of yourselves. Lots of love.